The IRS has released some very important announcements. Millions of you guys can expect to receive some bonus relief payments this month.
And by the way, there are a lot of jobs coming to people that you're going to need to train up people, thanks to the bipartisan infrastructure bill. Everybody knew, and you heard from my secretary a little bit earlier, America was falling behind in infrastructure.
But there is a deadline. Taxpayers have just a few weeks left to claim this money. And so, here is some big news. The IRS is sending refunds to more than 1 million Americans who filed their taxes late in the early days of the crisis. But there is a new deadline. The agency has announced that taxpayers have until September 30th to take advantage of this new relief. Typically, people who file their taxes late without requesting an extension can expect to pay penalties of up to 25% of the amount of taxes that they owe. For 2019 and 2020, however, the agency is suspending taxes or the penalty for those taxes for late filers. Taxpayers who have already paid a fine will automatically be given refunds, the IRS said. And more than 1.6 million people are set to receive refunds or credits totaling $1 billion. This is an average of $700 per person. Although some of you guys may get more and some may get less. The IRS said taxpayers who have already filed their returns don't need to do anything. If you've been notified of a fine but have not yet paid it, the penalty will be erased, and while those who have already paid a penalty will receive a refund or credit, most of the refunds will be delivered by the end of this month. So that's some good news to look forward to. And according to the IRS, taxpayers who have yet to file returns for 2019 and 2020 can still have penalties forgiven, as long as their returns are filed by September 30th, 2022. That gives late filers just over 2 weeks to wrap up outstanding returns. Now the effort is to move to help struggling taxpayers affected by the crisis, and the plan can also help the agency, which is struggling to dig itself out of a massive backlog of unprocessed tax returns. In a notice, the IRS said the crisis had an unprecedented effect on the tax agency, highlighting the agency's roles in distributing stimulus payments and taking other steps to help taxpayers weather the crisis. Dropping late filing penalties could also benefit the IRS by helping the agency focus on whittling down its backlog of tax paperwork and returning to normal for the 2023 tax season. Several House Democrats are facing tough re-election bids, as well as one congressional hopeful, and they are defending their party's expansion of the IRS that was included in the so-called Inflation Reduction Act, which does little to immediately address inflation in America. The measure, backed by Joe Manchin, successfully passed through Democrat-controlled chambers last month and was signed by President Biden. It will grant an $80 billion boost to the IRS over a 10-year period. The billions of dollars for the IRS from the measure will go towards filing 87,000 IRS positions, Social Security beneficiaries. Rising inflation also means more retirees will end up being taxed on their benefits, and when Congress introduced Social Security taxation in the 1980s, it set income thresholds and avoided indexing them for inflation. On the positive side of this, retirees whose costs are rising more slowly than the official inflation figures will benefit from the latest cost of living adjustments, according to the U.S. Labor Department. And Bernie Sanders and Peter DeFazio have introduced the Social Security Expansion Act, which would, among other measures, boost benefits, adopt the Consumer Price Index for the elderly, and subject all income above $250,000 to the Social Security payroll tax. However, Democratic Representative John Larson has also proposed a Social Security reform bill. His bill adopts the CPI index for the elderly as the basis of the annual COLA and applies the payroll tax to annual wages above $400,000. Experts say that Larson's bill includes more benefit improvements than the DeFazio-Sanders bill, but DeFazio-Sanders extends solvency for significantly longer than the John Larson bill. Now everybody, officials are warning Americans of a global food shortage. The Biden administration is working to address several issues that the American people are currently facing. During the crisis, Americans across the country got a little extra help from stimulus checks, but for most of us, it's been a while since one has hit our bank accounts. And Georgia's governor recently signed Bill 1302, which is a new law attempting to offset the rising cost of inflation by refunding some money back into the hands of taxpayers. We've seen inflation hit the South pretty hard, as housing and rental prices in southern cities continue to skyrocket on an upward trend, leaving some wondering if it's time to relocate. And the amount you receive will all depend on the marital status, dependent on how filed your taxes to begin with. The payouts begin at $250 and go up from there. Georgia residents who are single or filed separately can expect to receive a payment of $250, but if he files the head of household, the refund will be $375. And then married couples or anyone who filed joint taxes in 2020 and 2021 will receive a payment of $500. To qualify for the one-time bonus, you have to be an active Georgia resident, as the bill excludes sending payments to non-residents, dependents, or trust. The good news is that the payment will automatically hit your account if you have filed your taxes in the year 2020 and 2021. And according to a set of tax rebates, they're also going to be hitting bank accounts for people in New Mexico. Those who have filed taxes and choose direct deposit will see the rebate checks beginning next week. Those who chose to have checks mailed can expect those to come throughout the month, and the round of payments due in July have income limits attached to them. Those who are single filers must have had an income of $75,000 or less on their 2020 tax return to qualify for a $250 rebate payment. The New Mexico Taxation and Revenue Department says paper checks will also begin to be processed and mailed next week. The department says they have a limited capacity in how many checks they can print per day. And now, the United Nations warned that the world faces a catastrophe because of the growing food shortage around the globe. There is actually a new stimulus relief program that is approved. About $500 stimulus checks available for many people are available right now for you. Joe Manchin has just shared a new list of changes that he would like to see made on President Biden's Build Back Better package. So you want to watch until the end of the video to see if you're eligible for this fourth stimulus check. We have a ton of good news about the fourth stimulus payment, so you definitely don't want to miss out on it. Over 500,000 Massachusetts low-income residents dealt with some of the financial blows as the onset of the crisis continued. But the good news, everybody, is that many residents of Massachusetts should start receiving $500 payments from the Baker administration within the next week. The $500 payments comprising the first phase of the $460 million crisis essential employee premium pay program are funded through federal stimulus crisis relief funds. Checks will be mailed automatically to eligible individuals, whether regardless of what type of industry you work in or business you work for. And no type of application or action is needed on behalf of Massachusetts essential workers themselves. The Baker administration is actually based eligibility on a broad set of criteria, starting with whether residents filed their 2020 tax returns. People must have also been Massachusetts residents in 2020 or part residents in a Commonwealth between March 10th and 2020. Between March and December 31st, 2020, the governor said, I am pleased to sign the Crisis Essential Employee Premium Program into law. And our administration has worked quickly to design the parameters for the program with plans to efficiently begin distribution of these payments. This program will support these workers who served our communities, especially in the early days of the crisis. Now, income is also a major eligibility factor for the $500 payments. Residents slated to receive checks will have earned at least $12,750 in employment compensation in 2020, with their total household income at or below 32% of the federal poverty level in 2020. According to Governor Baker's administration, married filers can each be eligible, provided each independently qualifies. The governor has also said unemployment compensation in 2019 or 2021 does not affect eligibility for a round one check, so long as you are otherwise eligible based on residency and income. State executive branch employees are also disqualified from the program's first round if they have already received or will receive a one-time check from the Commonwealth. The program still has millions of dollars to dole out to essential workers. It's great to see that more state governments are distributing their own state relief checks.
Comparison of the bailouts of businesses and major corporations and banks. And folks, I'm here today to talk about the issue that affects every single American in their retirement. People around the country wake up every day wondering whether they've saved enough to provide for themselves and their families before they stop working. Working a job that provides basic dignity. A good middle-class job you can raise a family on, a job that provides a dignified retirement and will give you peace of mind. Think of all the people, and many of you went to bed at night putting your head in the pillow and saying, am I going to be all right? Is my family going to be all right? Is my wife or my husband or my child, they're going to be okay? It's a dignified retirement with your spouse or the home and your community you worked and lived for your whole life. But the reality is, for so many people, the goalposts keep moving. Unfortunately, that's probably Trump calling me. I hear that sound there. Unfortunately, this happens to people who need it most, working people in this country. A lot of politicians like to talk about how they're going to do something about it. Well, I'm here today to say we've done something about it. And I've kept their promise. I campaigned to restore the backbone of this country, the middle class and unions, because I know this. The middle class built America, and unions built the middle class of today. I'm keeping a promise, one of the most significant achievement union workers and retirees have received in over 50 years, and that's not hyperbole. For years and years, union workers have been driving trucks from factories to stores, bagging your groceries, constructing the buildings, bridges, roads we need, and so much more. The ironworkers, bricklayers, carpenters, laborers, plumbers, truck drivers, musicians, I might add, food workers, and so much more. And with each paycheck you earn, their employers put money into their pension plans. These workers work hard today to secure retirement for tomorrow. That's what it's all about. Now, a lot of businesses aren't able or willing to run their own pension plans. And in some industries, workers are employed by several different employers over the course of a year or long.